Welcome to A History Chapter. Today, we journey back to the turning point of the American Revolutionary War, the Battle of Saratoga. Fought in the autumn of 1777, this battle not only signified a major victory for the American forces, but also marked a decisive moment in the struggle for independence from British rule. The background of the American Revolutionary War, which set the stage for key battles like Saratoga, is rooted in the complex and escalating conflict between the 13 American colonies and the British government throughout the 18th century. This period was marked by growing tensions over issues of governance, taxation, and representation, ultimately leading to a revolutionary movement that sought greater autonomy or independence from British rule. The seeds of discontent were sown in the early 1760s, with the British government's decision to impose a series of taxes on the colonies, aiming to pay off debts incurred during the French and Indian War, 1754 to 1763. The Stamp Act of 1765, which required that many printed materials in the colonies be produced on stamped paper produced in London, carrying an embossed revenue stamp, was particularly detested. This act, along with subsequent taxes and regulations, was met with widespread protest in the colonies under the rallying cry of "No taxation without representation," as the colonies had no direct representation in the British Parliament. As resistance grew, the British government attempted to assert its control through additional acts and measures, leading to further unrest. The Boston Massacre in 1770, where British soldiers killed 5 civilian men, and the Boston Tea Party in 1773, where American colonists dumped 342 chests of British tea into Boston Harbor as a protest against the Tea Act, were pivotal events that escalated tensions. In response to these acts of defiance, the British enacted the coercive acts, known as the Intolerable Acts in the colonies, in 1774, aiming to punish Massachusetts for the Tea Party and to strengthen British authority. These acts closed Boston Harbor until the tea was paid for, altered the Massachusetts Charter to reduce democratic meetings, and allowed royal officials accused of crimes in the colonies to be tried in England or other colonies. These measures, perceived as punitive and oppressive, galvanized the colonies, leading to the First Continental Congress in 1774, where delegates from 12 colonies, all except Georgia, met to organize colonial resistance against the British. The Congress agreed to a boycott of British goods and prepared for possible military action. The conflict escalated into open warfare in April 1775, with the battles of Lexington and Concord marking the beginning of the American Revolutionary War. The war was not just a battle over specific laws or taxes, but a fundamental disagreement over how the colonies were governed and who had the authority to legislate for them. The American colonies sought self-governance, rights, and liberties, while the British aimed to maintain control over their empire. This foundational conflict set the stage for the ensuing struggle for independence, leading to decisive confrontations, such as the Battle of Saratoga. The conflict escalated into open warfare in April 1775, with the battles of Lexington and Concord, marking the beginning of the American Revolutionary War. The war was not just a battle over specific laws or taxes, but a fundamental disagreement over how the colonies were governed and who had the authority to legislate for them. The American colonies sought self-governance, rights, and liberties, while the British aimed to maintain control over their empire. This foundational conflict set the stage for the ensuing struggle for independence, leading to decisive confrontations such as the Battle of Saratoga. The Battle of Saratoga, fought in 2 stages in September and October of 1777, was the culmination of the British strategy to divide the rebellious colonies along the Hudson River Valley and isolate New England from the southern colonies. The plan was orchestrated by British General John Burgoyne, who led a well-equipped army southward from Canada into New York State, aiming to meet with additional British forces moving northward from New York City. Burgoyne's campaign began with initial successes, including the capture of Fort Ticonderoga in early July 1777. However, the British campaign faced significant challenges. The British Army had to navigate through dense wilderness, which slowed their progress and depleted their supplies. The terrain of the region, combined with the American strategy of destroying bridges and blocking roads, further hampered Burgoyne's advance. Under the leadership of General Horatio Gates, and with key figures like Benedict Arnold, the American forces prepared to confront Burgoyne's advance. The Americans fortified strategic locations and gathered intelligence on British movements, bolstering their defensive capabilities. Contrary to Burgoyne's expectations, the British forces in New York City, led by General Howe, did not move northward to support his campaign. Instead, Howe launched an attack on Philadelphia, leaving Burgoyne to proceed without the expected reinforcements. The American strategy included rallying local militia forces to the cause, significantly increasing the number of troops available to resist the British advance. The harassment of British detachments and supply lines by these militias further strained Burgoyne's resources. The First Battle of Saratoga, also known as the Battle of Freeman's Farm, took place on September 19, 1777, and was a pivotal engagement in the American Revolutionary War. This battle was the first of two major conflicts in the Saratoga campaign and set the stage for the eventual American victory in the Second Battle. The clash involved British forces led by General John Burgoyne and American troops under the command of General Horatio Gates, with significant contributions from General Benedict Arnold, who played a crucial role despite not officially holding a field command during the battle. General John Burgoyne was in command of a British force composed of approximately 7,000 men, including British regulars, German auxiliaries, Hessians, Loyalists, Native American allies, and Canadian militia. Burgoyne was an experienced officer known for his previous successes and was tasked with leading the northern arm of a three-pronged attack designed to split the American colonies. The American forces were commanded by General Horatio Gates, with General Benedict Arnold as his most aggressive field commander. The American Army was composed of Continental Army troops, militia forces, and volunteers, bringing together a diverse group of soldiers with varying levels of training and experience, numbered in total 9,000 men. The British Army, advancing southward, aimed to engage and defeat the American forces to clear the way to Albany. Burgoyne's plan involved pushing through the American defenses in the Hudson Valley. The Americans, aware of the British approach, took up strong defensive positions along Bemis Heights, with fortifications designed to take advantage of the natural terrain, which offered both high ground and protection by the Hudson River. General Arnold advocated for taking the fight to the British before they could reach the fortified positions, leading to a decision to engage Burgoyne's forces at Freeman's Farm. This move was strategically designed to halt the British advance and inflict maximum casualties. The battle commenced when British forces encountered American troops positioned among the trees and fields around Freeman's Farm. The fighting was intense and characterized by close combat, with both sides exchanging heavy fire. Arnold was in the thick of the action, leading and inspiring the American forces, while Burgoyne's troops fought determinedly to break through the American lines. Despite the ferocity of the British assaults, the Americans held their ground, using the cover of the dense forest to their advantage and executing well-coordinated counterattacks. The British managed to push the Americans back temporarily, but at a high cost in casualties. The Americans, meanwhile, demonstrated their growing tactical proficiency and determination to resist the British advance. The Battle of Freeman's Farm was technically a British victory, as they held the field at the end of the day. However, it was a Pyrrhic victory. The British suffered heavy losses, with nearly 600 casualties compared to the American losses of around 300. The high British casualties, combined with the failure to decisively defeat the American forces or break through their defenses, meant that Burgoyne's army was significantly weakened. This outcome had strategic implications, straining the British supply lines and leaving Burgoyne's forces in a precarious position. Moreover, the battle had a significant psychological impact, boosting American morale and demonstrating the effectiveness of the Continental Army and militia forces when fighting in concert. It also highlighted the tactical acumen of American leaders like Benedict Arnold, whose leadership on the battlefield was instrumental in achieving the American objectives. The aftermath of the Battle of Freeman's Farm set the stage for the Second Battle of Saratoga, with the American forces emboldened by their performance and the British increasingly isolated and under pressure. This engagement was a critical moment in the Saratoga campaign, underscoring the resilience of the American forces and the challenges facing the British in their efforts to suppress the rebellion. Between the first and second battles, several key developments occurred. The American forces, bolstered by the arrival of additional militia units, boosting the number of troops to around 12,000, increased in strength and morale. They improved their fortifications and prepared for another engagement, consolidating their positions around Bemis Heights. General Burgoyne's army faced mounting difficulties, including dwindling supplies, growing casualties, and the lack of expected reinforcements from New York City. The British were effectively isolated, with American forces controlling the surrounding territory. Burgoyne, despite his precarious situation, decided to remain in the area in the hope of receiving support or finding a weakness in the American defenses. This decision ultimately led to his army's further entrenchment in a disadvantageous position. The Second Battle of Saratoga, known as the Battle of Bemis Heights, occurred on October 7, 1777. The British Army, weakened by casualties from the first battle and diminishing supplies, faced a well-entrenched and numerically superior American force. The Americans had fortified positions on Bemis Heights, offering both strategic advantage and protection. They adopted a defensive stance, utilizing their strong positions on Bemis Heights to await the British attack. However, the dynamic changed due to the aggressive actions of Benedict Arnold, who, even without official command, took to the field and led American forces in crucial attacks against the British. The Battle of Bemis Heights ended in a decisive victory for the American forces. The British, unable to break through the American defenses and suffering from heavy casualties and a lack of supplies, were forced to retreat. This retreat would lead to the eventual surrender of Burgoyne's entire army on October 17, 1777, marking a significant turning point in the Revolutionary War. 6,000 British soldiers were captured, and the British plan to divide the colonies lay in ruins. After Saratoga, the British shifted their strategic focus to the southern colonies, hoping to leverage Loyalist support there. This shift led to initial successes, but ultimately culminated in the British defeat at Yorktown in 1781, effectively ending major combat operations in the war. Perhaps the most significant outcome of the Battle of Saratoga was its role in securing French support for the American cause. The victory convinced France that the American rebels had a viable chance of success, leading to the signing of the Treaty of Alliance in February 1778. This treaty formalized French military support for the United States, providing crucial supplies, additional troops, and importantly, a powerful navy, which eventually boosted morale, and in the long term gave the 13 colonies the independence they were seeking since 1775. The Battle of Saratoga is often cited as the turning point of the American Revolutionary War. It set the colonies on the path to securing their independence and establishing the United States as a sovereign nation. The battle and its aftermath highlighted the importance of international alliances and the impact of global geopolitics on local conflicts. These lessons would influence future diplomatic and military strategies in the United States and Europe. Saratoga has been commemorated as a symbol of American perseverance and strategic acumen. It remains a celebrated example of how a fledgling nation could overcome significant challenges to secure its place on the world stage. As we conclude our journey through the Battle of Saratoga, we can see how determination and courage tipped the scales of victory. Thank you for joining us on a history chapter. If you enjoyed this video, consider like, subscribe, and share it to friends. It helps us creating more content for you. We hope this episode has provided insight into the significance of the Battle of Saratoga and its lasting legacy on the world stage. Remember, history is not just about the past. It's a light that guides us into the future. Until next chapter.